For centuries, the Ottoman Empire was the big landlord of southeastern Europe. By the early 1900s, however, the landlord was getting old, forgetful, and frankly, a bit broke. Everyone called it the sick man of Europe, which is a polite way of saying the vultures were circling. And the local tenants, Serbia, Bulgaria, Greece, and Montenegro, were done paying rent. They had been reading up on this trendy new idea called nationalism, which is the belief that everyone who speaks your language and shares your customs should live in one neat little country. It's a lovely idea, except for the tiny detail that for 500 years, everyone had been living completely mixed together. Serbs, Bulgarians, Greeks, Turks, Albanians, Vlachs, Jews. It was a demographic nightmare for anyone with a fresh map and a desire for clean borders. The solution they landed on wasn't exactly a friendly neighborhood potluck. It was more like a violent eviction notice for anyone who didn't fit the new national branding. So, in a shocking display of temporary friendship, the Balkan states formed the Balkan League in 1912. Their goal was simple: kick the Ottomans out of Europe for good. And to everyone's surprise, especially the Ottomans, it worked spectacularly well. The Ottoman armies, poorly led and stretched thin, basically collapsed. The Balkan League armies charged through Macedonia, Thrace, and Albania. But this wasn't just a clean military campaign. As Ottoman authority evaporated, local Christian militias and regular army units began what they called liberation. For the local Muslim population, Turks, Albanians, and Pomaks, liberation felt suspiciously like mass murder and forced displacement. In places like Kumanovo and Monastir, retreating soldiers were one problem. The neighbors who turned on you were another. The dream of a nation-state wasn't just about drawing lines on a map. It was about erasing the people who didn't fit inside them. Let's be clear, this violence wasn't an accidental byproduct of war. It was the whole point. This was demographic engineering before the term was invented. The goal was to create facts on the ground, so that when the great powers sat down to draw the final maps, the population would conveniently match the desired borders. Serbian Prime Minister Nikola Paji was quite open about needing to deal with the Albanian problem. The methods were brutally efficient. Entire villages were burned to the ground. There were mass executions, like the infamous one at Lazma, where hundreds of Albanian men were killed. Forced conversions were also a popular tool. In newly liberated areas, Orthodox priests would arrive with the army to give Muslim populations a choice: a cross or an axe. It was a state-building project where the primary tools were fire, fear, and forced baptisms. You can't build a pure nation-state with impure people in it, apparently. After successfully getting rid of the landlord, the Balkan League immediately realized they all hated each other. The First Balkan War ended, and, almost instantly, the Second Balkan War began in 1913. The main prize they fought over was Macedonia, a region everyone claimed was historically theirs. Bulgaria felt it had done most of the heavy lifting and deserved the biggest slice. Serbia and Greece disagreed, formed a new alliance, and told Bulgaria to get lost. The result was a free-for-all. And all those efficient ethnic cleansing techniques they had just perfected on the Muslims, they were now enthusiastically applied to fellow Christians. Bulgarian forces committed atrocities against Greek civilians in cities like Saras. In response, the Greek army burned the Bulgarian quarter of Kilkis to the ground, killing thousands. It was a masterclass in how quickly the liberator becomes the oppressor the moment the target changes. The playbook was the same, just with a different enemy of the week. Macedonia itself was the epicenter of this madness. For the people living there, it was a waking nightmare. Depending on which army marched into your village, your identity was subject to immediate revision. If the Serbian army arrived, the local Slavic population were declared Southern Serbs who had just forgotten their true identity. Schools were shut down and teachers replaced with Serbs. If the Bulgarian army showed up, those same people were Bulgarians, and any Serbian priest was promptly kicked out. And if the Greek army took over, any Slavic speakers were encouraged, often forcefully, to remember their true Hellenic roots. Imagine being a farmer, and on Monday you're told you're a Serb, on Wednesday you're a Bulgarian, and on Friday you're a Greek. All you actually want to do is harvest your crops, but instead you're getting a crash course in 3 different national histories at gunpoint. It's the most violent form of census-taking imaginable. So, where were the grown-ups in the room, the great powers of Europe? They were, of course, watching with grave concern. They were so concerned, in fact, that an international commission was funded by the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace to go and investigate. The resulting 1914 report is a stunningly bleak read. It meticulously documents the massacres, the village burnings, and the systematic terror. It quotes soldiers who openly admit their orders were to kill all men over 16. The commission concluded that all sides were guilty of horrific atrocities. It was a landmark report, a triumph of fact-finding journalism and humanitarian concern. And what was the result? Absolutely nothing. The report was published in the summer of 1914, just as a certain archduke was getting shot in Sarajevo. The world was about to have a much, much bigger war to worry about. The Balkan atrocities became a footnote, a grim warm-up act for the main event. After the dust settled from World War I, which the Balkan Wars had so helpfully kicked off, the international community landed on a new, more humane solution. It was called population exchange. This was the sanitized, bureaucratic version of ethnic cleansing. The idea was that instead of murdering people or forcing them out, you would create a treaty that legally required them to leave. The 1919 Treaty of Neuilly-sur-Seine organized a voluntary exchange between Greece and Bulgaria. Unsurprisingly, when your home is surrounded by people who hate you, your decision to leave isn't exactly voluntary. This culminated in the 1923 Treaty of Lausanne between Greece and Turkey, which mandated the compulsory exchange of over 1.6 million people. Orthodox Christians in Turkey had to leave for Greece, and Muslims in Greece had to leave for Turkey. Many of these families had lived in those exact spots since the Byzantine or Ottoman Golden Ages. But their history didn't matter. All that mattered was that their religion didn't match the new flag. It was ethnic cleansing with a rubber stamp and a handshake. So, what's the takeaway from this horror show? The Balkan Wars created a precedent. They demonstrated that in the 20th century, you could fundamentally remake the ethnic character of a region through brutal force, and the world would eventually just accept the new reality. The hardened, ultra-nationalist identities forged in this conflict didn't just go away. The grievances of a greater Serbia or a greater Bulgaria simmered. Gavrilo Princip, the man who assassinated Franz Ferdinand and started World War I, was a product of this very environment, a Bosnian Serb nationalist radicalized by the dream of uniting all South Slavs. And 80 years later, during the collapse of Yugoslavia in the 1990s, the world would watch in horror as the exact same language of cleansing and the exact same tactics of village burning and mass expulsion were used all over again. It seems the primary lesson learned from the Balkan Wars was not how to avoid such tragedies, but how to perform them more effectively next time. Humans have a terrible habit of treating history not as a warning, but as a playbook. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more historical insights. Thanks for watching, nerds!